So that brings us into this show here. What was your intent with the work that we're looking at that surrounds us now?
Well, I'm going to rely on a quote here. Always been an avid reader, and John Fowles is one of my favorite authors of all times. And I think this kind of encapsulates what this body of work is about, probably better than I could say it. It says, "There is something in the nature of nature, in its presentness, its seeming transience, its creative ferment and hidden potential that corresponds very closely with the wild, or green man, or for that matter woman, in our psyches. And it's something that disappears as soon as it's relegated to an automatic process, a status of a merely classifiable thing." So I think that says
there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
I hope if you don't mind me asking this, but could you read that again?
Sure. And also, I would also say, just studying Buddhism over the years, which this embodies also realizing that everything changes, that you're never on solid ground, it just makes sense to me. Okay. "There is something in the nature of nature, in its presentness, its seeming transience, its creative ferment and hidden potential that corresponds very closely with the wild or green man, or for that matter woman, in our psyches, and it is something that disappears as soon as it is relegated to an automatic process, a status of a merely classifiable thing."
That's really profound.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so too, because, with a lot of this work, if you were to ask me what it's about, it's just that. It's if I could say it, I would write it.
So it's funny that you say that, because there's a quote from the Catalyst article that caught my attention, and it is that you said, "I don't know what anything means until about a year or two afterward, if I ever figure it out." Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, it's I'll look at it, and I'm not trying to say anything with any particular piece. It's like somebody asked me, "Well, what is your work trying to say?" Well, that's a politician's job, not mine. My work is trying to express something that is both personal and universal, that can't be classified, that is mutable and is changing, and that is in this constant vibration of life as we know it, and the filter and the percolation that's going on. And sometimes I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember I was really confused at that time about, but that's the answer. I can see it right there." So I don't know if that makes sense.
And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but would you equate it to that notion of channeling when you're making, where you're just trying to open yourself and be in the moment, like nature is in the moment in the creative process? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, but sometimes the channel is clogged because I'll get there, and when I go into my studio, I just sit there. Or usually I sit there and meditate for a while, and then I sit there and I do air painting or air drawing. Like air guitar.
So what?
Because there's something about the movement of the arm.
It's almost like a conductor.
And not the wrist, because I used to, forgive me for being crude, but I am. I used to call the illustration jobs hand jobs, because I was doing somebody else's concept most of the time. Sometimes I got to do my own concepts. But whereas when you're working with your body, with your arm,
from the shoulder,
not with your hand and your, prefrontal cord, it's a different experience. So, and it's scary because you just never know if you're gonna sink or swim on it. And I have had times during my second residency at the BCCA, I did an 11-foot painting, which now hangs in the Epicenter, that I thought I just wasted a whole month. This is garbage. What was I thinking? I'm not an artist. I need to move to Akron and sell Avon. And so I had rolled it up, and I put it away for 10 years. And 10 years later, I opened it, and I'm like, that's a damn good painting. And I know exactly what it's about, too. It's forces. It's the forces of nature working, collaboratively and so on. So then I went back in and started painting on it. So sometimes it's automatic, and sometimes I'm tearing pieces up. Oh, and especially if I get a commission sometimes, that's scary for me sometimes. Not always, sometimes it's fine. I mean, with the commercial work, it was fine when I got a commission. I never failed on that, but sometimes in doing my own work, I would just do some pieces that were just bad, but I hide them. Yeah.
So, is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about in relation to the work that's here?
Well, it's not so much that's here. I will say this: having taught at 3 colleges and then having to work in the business world, it made me want to take a quick flight from academia. And I think that the sort of pettiness and backstabbing and that goes on in academia is because the stakes are so low. Whereas in the business world, it's straightforward. I didn't do a piece until I had a purchase order. It was very cut and dry, very, clean. Academia, not so much. That's my experience.
Politics.
Yeah. I mean, it was good, and the students were great, and I learned as much from my colleagues and other students as I taught. But I didn't want to be institutionalized anymore.
One of the strongest signals that I get from this show is, besides this sense of visual poetry or visual music, is color. Can you talk a little bit about what color means to you?
Well, I used to like black and white better because I just felt it was more authentic and not sugar-coated. But I've gotten to like working with color more and more, and working with some traditional techniques of glazing, putting color and transparent color. For example, on the piece on the corner, the map is not the territory. That was done differently than all the rest of the paintings here, because I actually put that on the floor and would make solutions of oil paint and medium and pour it, which none of these other paintings are poured. They're essentially drawings, pour it, and then move the paint around with the straw by blowing on it with the straw. But I did that like 20 layers to get the kind of depth. In a lot of ways, I don't see much difference between drawing and painting, because one is goo on a brush and the other one is dust on a stick. But you're still making marks, and the essence of the work is the mark making. It's the topography of the piece. Making that and really interacting with the topography of any work gives me other ideas for another piece. So the mark making to me is the most important. any work that I did is not successful if it wouldn't translate as a black and white. So my primary interest is value over color. Color is an afterthought in a way. Because when I think about and start making a painting, I'm not thinking about color. I'm thinking about composition, art, what kind of mark making. Actually, Dean Fortune, that teaches at the Moran, said that I draw with an iron fist. But when I'm working, and starting out a painting, I am drawing with an iron fist. I can't believe it took me this long to get here, but doing smaller studies, if I'm going to do a big piece, has really helped in terms of facilitating the process by working out the composition and having the color just evolve. But when I'm drawing, I have to have complete silence. I mean, if it's figure drawing, that's background, but if I'm really drawing to work out a piece, no sound is my preference. And but once I have the drawing down, I can listen to music, to podcasts, to whatever.
I want to thank you all for coming. We've got some artwork in a portfolio here if anyone is curious.
Some of the embarrassing stuff.
Yeah. So please feel free to ask some personal questions and mill about, have another glass of wine. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks.